I don't know if anyone is talking about this book anymore. I'm about 3 or 4 years behind on the craziness that is The Martian by Andy Weir, but I just read this for the first time a couple weeks ago, and only a couple days ago I watched the film for the first time, and I thought Matt Damon did a great job. I thought it was a great movie. But yeah, I read The Martian for the first time. I was really scared to read this book for the longest time because I didn't know if I was going to like it. I'd heard good things. Really, really great good things. Multiple people have told me this is one of their favorite books, but then I've also heard from other people that they just didn't like it at all. So I was wondering where I was going to fall on that spectrum. And I have mixed thoughts. I definitely have some mixed thoughts. I didn't love this book, but I didn't hate it. So I'm somewhere in between. Like, I'm happy I read it. But, you know, am I ever going to reread it? No, I'm just gonna watch the movie because the movie's better. But let's talk about Andy Weir, who wrote this real quick for those who don't know the story behind this book. Andy Weir first started to publish this, I think, as like a serial. He published in like little portions, I think on his website or something like that, and then he self-published it, and then later it was picked up by a publisher where it was then, you know, published, and then the movie rights, it was made into a film, huge thing, everyone, The Martian, right? And then Andy Weir has then written another book called Artemis, which I don't know how people felt about that one. If you've read it and you recommend it, or what are your thoughts, let me know, because I would definitely be up for reading it, perhaps, possibly. For those who don't know the story of The Martian, we follow our main character, Mark Watney. He is an astronaut who is stranded on Mars. His crew, the Ares 3, I believe, they're on Mars for stuff, you know, sciencey stuff, and an accident happens and the crew thinks that Mark is dead, so they're forced to leave him so that they can survive, and the world for quite a bit thinks Mark is dead, but really Mark is alive, and this is his story of staying alive alone on Mars, trying to figure out how he's going to get home, essentially, and how he's going to keep living on Mars and not starve. He has to, you know, he has to have food, he needs to make water. He's living in this structure that's not meant really to be there for a long period of time, because this crew was only supposed to be there for I don't know how long, but not that long. So, you know, he's living in an area where he's constantly having problems, one after the other, blah blah blah. Basically, just to sum it up really quick, this is just a survival story set on Mars. Now let's talk about what I liked, what I think this book did really well, and then we'll talk about what I didn't really like. First off, this is a sci-fi. This is a science fiction novel, story, whatever. Normally, when I read science fiction, or a lot of the science fiction I've read, when you have space travel, going to other planets and such, I feel as if aliens are a huge thing in these stories, because that's just what there is. Extraterrestrial intelligence, wars, and all of this other stuff, and plagues and disease, and, you know, countless other things. But this story really took something so simple. It took everything away. It stripped all of that, and instead we just have a story about a man who's stranded alone on Mars, which is such a simple concept, but Andy Weir is able to take this story and bring it to life in such a humorous, fun way. He has the way he brings Mark Watney as a character to life. I loved so much. I loved Mark Watney as a character for the most part. He did kind of get a bit, his humor didn't always work well with me. Maybe his jokes didn't always jive with me, but I did find him to be just a character that is going to stick with you. I'm never going to forget Mark Watney and his potatoes and his disco music. That's something that's going to stay with me. That being said, let's talk about what I didn't like. The main thing that I didn't really enjoy about The Martian would be all of the sciencey bits behind this book. This book does a good job of really describing how someone would survive on Mars, but in a very descriptive, science, mathy way that I just, as a person that's not a big fan of math, just couldn't really get into. This book took me a while to actually get into. At least the first 100 pages, I just struggled. I struggled and I wondered, how do people like this? And then it got a lot more interesting. Things started to pick up. But then even then, every time Mark Watney was facing a problem and had to solve it, those parts where he was just describing all of this stuff, I wanted to skim. I didn't skim, I read it, but I wanted to. So wasn't a big fan of that. Though if you're a science math person, this could be something you like. I don't know. I don't know. It just felt so repetitive and tedious because Mark Watney obviously had an issue and another issue and another life-threatening thing, one after the other, because he's alone on Mars, on a place where he shouldn't be. Of course he's gonna have life-threatening things left and right, but it was just so repetitive, and after a while, I just wanted things to end, unfortunately. But to end this on a more positive note, sort of, I am happy that I read this, because it just feels like one of those stories that people are going to constantly, years from now, pick up, because Mark Watney is such an interesting character. This is such an interesting story. I think overall, I love the concept and the idea behind this story more than I loved the execution, which is why I really enjoyed the film a lot more than the book. The film took everything that I didn't really like and just simplified it and put it together in such a great way to just, I would rewatch the movie countless times and I will probably never pick up the book again. But like I said, I am glad I read it. It sounds horrible. I'm so sorry. This was like a 3.5-star read for me. So that's The Martian by Andy Weir. I'm happy I finally read it. Happy I finally watched the movie. I would love to know if you have read this book. What are your thoughts? I know a lot of people love this. I know that. And I wish I would have loved it more. But you know what? It's fine. It's fine. At the end of the day, I'm happy I read this. This is a book about a guy who's trying to make it back home, who's stuck on Mars. And as a reader, I think we were all rooting for Mark Watney, and at the end, I wanted him to live. And I'm not going to spoil the book for anyone who hasn't read this, but it was good. It was okay. It was alright. Not my favorite, but it's cool. It's whatever. I think that's all I have to say. I am rambling. I hope you guys have a great day or night wherever you are, and I will see you in another video very soon. Bye.